One of the hardest parts of Clubhouse is just how easily accessible the actual objectives, the mainstay objectives of choice on that second floor are to the outside world, meaning that any attacking team has essentially direct sightlines or even access in terms of that CCTV hard wall with a single breach to get in, can truly give a huge amount of power to that attacking team, and Fisher are feeling a lot of that hurt, that highway presence through that gym window, like you mentioned, to take the first blood. Thankfully, though, they have found a bit of a refrag back and even the odds down to a 4-on-4, but they're still making great use here of these highway side. You got Hennessy still holding that gym room window, trying to make sure that that rotation hole that's placed in wall gets a little bit wider to give them a sight line over towards that Logi door. They do know that Fisher had initially placed a presence over there. We also noted that there was one player down on that first floor of Robe. I'm sure Robe will likely be capable of retreating back up through that middle central staircase to allow for them to have a little bit of extra presence on that second floor. We can see them doing so now, looking to maybe deny anyone that would be on Jacuzzi, but Akron have completely avoided that direction, and Nade primed underneath. And not only does it deal with Maple, it also, I believe, broke that Mira window that was in play, and the rest of Akron will easily dive into side, finding 2 kills for Warrior. Bathrobe takes 2 more to the wayside, and it's a 2-on-1. You have to find that kill. There is no more time, and Fisher will win based off time alone, because the 1-on-1 was not won by IMAP.
Unfortunately, they're getting a bit too aggressive, maybe not having enough information over by Jim to see if it was actually clear or not, so going for a plant just seemed a bit too seems like another power issue might have spiked over inside of their collegiate room, so we might be here for the prolonged inevitable, perhaps, but only time will tell. Maybe a rehost will need to be called now by Fisher, since they are down a player and are currently in the prep phase. Even our observer is asking them graciously, and they will confirm about that, so we will have to get a new lobby set up for them, unfortunately. But hey,
yeah,
I believe most issues have been resolved on our side as well. If not now, then soon. So maybe this is turning a new leaf for everyone. Not just the matchup here between the Zips and Falcons, but also us in the casting booth, perhaps. Or maybe I jinxed it. I don't know. I just realized what you were doing. That was good. That was a good bit.
I waited until it was perfectly with the transition.
Right,
maybe
right.
They'd assume the scene was incorrect. All right,
Yeah.
you gotta have fun with your producers every once in a while. Poke at them here and there. We've had a pretty good game so far, despite all the problems we've had. Not just in terms of the production going on, which we'll get all ironed out for you, and we'll have wonderful NECC production from this point onwards. Not just in this day, but season in general. It's new season jitters, right? It's gonna come down to it. But maybe that's also what we're seeing come out here from Fisher, because to be honest, that last round they won, I won't necessarily off a technicality, but they kind of got away with it. They survived the last few minutes. They won a very much so needed 1-on-1 that gave them just enough time to kind of avoid the player that was initially going to go for that defuser placement and then stepped off to go for the kill. They played it well, but they were struggling. That engagement, that Akron was very well timed. You talked about it before you go. The countdown, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you engage into sight. Akron maybe had a little bit less time than they were anticipating, maybe having that lack of information like you mentioned. Things like that can make or break an attacking push for a team, especially when you should theoretically have so much viable information just purely off of ego swinging, if that's what Akron want to do. I know a lot of collegiate teams like to do that, because you have access to those high-rate windows, because you've opened up Jacuzzi. And since they lost, I believe it was Kosa right off the bat. I believe it was Kosa. It may have been somebody else there for the Zips. They no longer had presence over towards that Jacuzzi side. They couldn't rotate somebody, and that would have given them all the pressure they needed, cut down that elbow hall, which is inevitably where the majority of the defense there, the Fisher, managed to stay absolute and stay alive in, which won them the round in the end.
Yeah, so again, still having Beezer over by Jim. He was still being relatively impactful towards the very end. Also, Robe just swinging from main door. That was the saving grace there for Fisher. And like you mentioned, with Akron still having to worry about Logi in about the final 40 to 30 seconds, it did limit them on where they could push, and it became a bit of a double-edged sword because they just eliminated someone from that position, but they didn't know for sure if it was still clear. They just assumed that there would only be one person in Logi, and the rest of the defenders would be bunkering in the bomb site properly, or maybe someone could even be going on a flank across the map over towards red. That does happen on the rare occasion. So again, that lack of info ended up being a small issue for Akron towards the final execute that they were attempting to go for. That forced them to get aggressive, and they were just in a bad spot altogether once they had just lost the man advantage that they were kind of working for through the entirety of that action phase. But altogether, 1-round loss, it's really not a big deal. The fact they've already won 3 on their attack is pretty default. So if they can scrape away 1 or 2 more round wins, they should be sitting pretty throughout the rest of map 1. And this makes total sense because altogether, I don't think Fisher has really gone to Clubhouse too often as their time as a collegiate team. So it makes total sense for a team like Akron, who has gone here several times against top contending teams in collegiate, to want to go here as just a complete sucker punch to start your best of 3 and already have a pretty successful map win. And then I believe the next map after this is a pretty default one as well. Yeah, it's Oregon. So really anything can happen on that. We always tend to call Oregon the great equalizer, and that claim still proves rather potent in collegiate too.
I can hear Dallas in my inner ear right now, John, just screaming, saying, if you don't feel 100% confident on a map, you do not play it. And unfortunately, R6 has way too many maps, right? You have a huge ban phase you have to go through. And because of that, there are maps that you're not necessarily going to be 100% comfortable with. But when you have kind of these de facto maps like Clubhouse, like Oregon, you kind of have to be on a somewhat level, on a somewhat basis, competent on it. But there is a big difference in terms of experience between these two teams. And I think that inevitably is going to play a big factor. We saw just yesterday, Ascent get played. The team that picked it barely scraped it by. And it's one of those moments where you say, hey, being the first, team on stream for a season, it's kind of nice. You get to intro in. Yeah, maybe there's some technical difficulties. That kind of stinks. But it's nice to be on broadcast and have that kind of exposure. But there's also the negative that comes alongside that, Sean. You're VOD reviewed. You are in writing, in video, all right, here in 4K. It's not actually 4K. Twitch doesn't really let you do that with good frame rate. The bit rate for it is not the very greatest, but you are in high definition, at the very least, in good frames, I hope.
Okay.
They have that on you. And that's something that not every team has going into week 2, right? You kind of got lucky and also unlucky at the same time. And if you show a weakness on a map here like Clubhouse, which is a de facto for most teams, it's not just going to be Akron that are going to beat you around the bullet here on this map. It's going to be all other teams as well, unless you really work on this map in general. And for the NECC, I'll be brutally honest with you here, John. I'm not sure how it changed over the last semester. This map is very popular. This map is a almost guarantee. You have to really learn this map, and teams are not going to give you the leeway, especially in the Legends division that we're in right now, to, I would say, I won't say word this, but you can't play it without your full 100% undivided attention. You got to work on it more.
Yeah, usually in the collegiate scene, you're going to want to see a lot of maps that have been around in the competitive pool and also haven't received a lot of changes in recent time. Those tend to be the favorites for most collegiate teams, and then they'll also have, especially in the higher division like Legends, for example, they'll have a couple of maps that they personally prefer due to their play style meshing really well with that map. So Fisher, a good example, they like to have a pretty aggressive roam style. So a map like Theme Park suits them very well, and they're also big fans of Azami. We're seeing that here in play. Azami is fantastic on not only most maps, but Theme Park is probably one of our stronger ones as a whole. So it makes sense to go there for them. Hence why Akron, preferred to ban that and remove that as an option for Fisher, and instead bringing them to a map that they don't tend to go to. It's a very tightly knit map. You can't roam as effectively as you could on a map like Theme Park, for example, compared to Clubhouse. So now you have to be bunkered up a lot more in the bomb site, which Akron just winning raw 50-50 gunfights is going to favor them exponentially more than Fisher College, and even able to somewhat trick around the bandit batteries by throwing both Selma charges. They get a nice avenue opened up into the bomb site if they want to approach from there, but I could imagine Akron will just be using this as a massive cutoff like they did last time CCTV wasn't played for Fisher.
Look at Koso at dropping inside Logi, holding a prone angle to maybe cut down a player that would possibly rotate out of construction. Robe is once again down on that first floor. Not in the bathroom this time around like we saw they were just last round on that bedroom side, but more actually over towards that stage. And a lot of damage has already been dealt towards that Fisher side. Hennessy has gone ahead and opened up the, easternmost wall alongside, southernmost wall alongside the, nor the one they already had just previously. The denial there for the bandit tricking is not really doing the most here for the side of Fisher, and it's any time is good time if we're facing a team like Akron, who have already fallen victim to Father Time in that last round to give the Fisher side their first win. So maybe there are some positive ahead. They didn't go for the full bandit trick, so they still have one here for construction wall, but unfortunately they don't have Robe, who was, like I said, on that stage section on the first floor. They get cut down from the information game of Akron, and it's Kosa to pick it up.
The biggest benefit to actually wasting those 2 pocket EMPs, though, by having that bandit trick is, like I mentioned, just lessening the utility that Akron could use to then remove this one bandit battery. Luckily, though, Kosa knows how the format works on the flooring here for CCTV looking through stock, so he can break that bandit battery with a Sophia charge and negate the fact that they don't have any pocket EMPs. And Hennessy, with a nasty angle, I think, caught the tail end of Beezer. He's now stuck on the floor and can't get revived, but it doxed him. And finally, the ace will finish off his prey, now forcing a 5 versus 3 once again with Akron in the lead.
Akron has been very clean when it comes to closing out these 5v3s as well. Well, keep in mind, they had a very close round before it came down to the 1v1. The reason why we saw it go to that was because Fisher were a team that, despite having all odds against them and a huge man disadvantage, they knew how to play the remaining angles that they had set in stone. Gohan has a wonderful angle to be able to cut down the presence that was on that eastern suburb. They have a secondary players holding over towards red stairs with the exact same thing. And while there is the possibility of Akron to just go right through that construction hardwall they've opened up and go for the plant, they're going to do a lot more than they just did last time around. No longer just hiding behind the barricade of choice. They're going to send a player up red stairs to catch the flank, takes down one, and assist to flush out that second as well over towards that cash room door, where they're easily closed out by the 2 players initially sitting inside cash. That just secures Akron their 4th round win.
And Akron's still holding off that main cutoff angle between CCTV heading into cash room, not from the plat breach, but having someone just play over by the main balcony, that little highway area you tend to call it for most default comms on Clubhouse. Just having someone by that CCTV window, making sure that no one can cross over, and already having Kosa work his way up red stairs, that accounts for every position that Fisher could use to stop a plant without flanking. And even then, I think the thermite was still being covered by someone directly in construction. So he would have heard or had some sort of comm given to him that someone is flanking up red stairs, or not red stairs, pardon, main stairs, and he can deny that play from happening as well. But at Fisher College, only having 3 defenders, they know one's by red, one's probably near Raptors heading to CCTV, there is a very low chance that someone might be trying to flank towards the very end of that round. So Akron having everything accounted for once again when doing that CCTV execute, and having a man advantage going into that execute, it leaves Fisher limited options. And I am a little shocked that they haven't been bringing as much plant denial to maybe help assist them when they are down on players, as they will have proper anchors that don't get too aggressive. So maybe having a smoke as one of those primary anchors could be helpful, since Akron tends to wait until the final 40 to 20 seconds to get an execute going, which adding a smoke into that mix with 3 Toxic Babes can actually really stretch Akron's timer to the point of maybe no time left for them to get that plant down.
Yeah, Akron's a bit traditional with that, falling into that old 30-second meta that was so prevalent about a year and a half, 9 months ago. When you have an older team like this, you expect to see some sort of play like that. But something that maybe is less expected when it comes to what we've seen through and through in these last few rounds, especially the first 2 that we saw go back down to this basement site. IMAT falls first, despite having a 5-0 start off the back of finding every player both times around on that top floor. Actually, I guess technically they got a 4K in the first round, so we won't count it both players in that second. But Beezer swings them inside CCTV, and IMAT's courts will be forced to stay there, now relegated over to cam duty, where they can hopefully try to assist the team as best they can, having those drones be watched to keep those cutoff angles secure. Fisher are very happy, though, with the successes they've gained. Like you said, the few things that we can really highlight for them when it came to that round is their 3, Sentry player on objective, their Sentinels on point. They do a wonderful job of actually maintaining and stay there, and I do think it is a huge surprise to not see them pick up something like a plant denial when they do know that Akron, when it comes to those final few seconds, will go for the plant. They will not stress for just the kills. They will stick it if they need to.
Well, 1:30 to go, a much slower pace here for Akron. Definitely not the fact that IMAT was the first blood favoring Fisher College, and now they're beginning to recede from that top and middle floor as well. They've burned about the default time, 1:20 to get the vertical down. Isn't too bad for Akron, but Fisher not only wasting away a bit of that drone economy and winning a gunfight, having all 5 defenders to bunker up, it's definitely going to bode well for them in this final minute. But once again, Akron, they still have plenty of utility to probably set up and get that diffuser down, or at the very least force a post-plant position. They've got range breach for the triple wall heading into church. They've got thermite and secondary breaches for hatch and dirt wall, and they also have nades in case they can dodge some of those magnets/ADSs to maybe work a kill and equalize into a 4v4.
With only 45 seconds remaining, though, Akron may start to feel that time crunch, considering they still hadn't dealt with Beezer that was sitting over towards Stock. They finally get cleared out, though. I'm not sure why Beezer was still really sitting inside there, maybe hoping that they'll be left unknown, but we talked about it before. Akron is a team that are very versatile and very, I guess, have a good work ethic when it comes to actually droning out every angle possible. It is the best piece of utility in every single operator's kits, and it's just a matter of making sure that you can succeed there. They see the shield placed inside Central Hall. They're still breaking down that first floor, but time is of the essence for Akron. They need to drop quickly in towards side to go for that plant. Jobu has already dropped down through Hatch of Kitchen, gets in to go for the plant. Warrior and Kosa find a kill apiece, and though Kosa does die, it's too little too late for Syrup, who has to go above and beyond and find 2 picks after the fact. Time constraint now in the lap, though, of the attackers. Jobu survives the initial onslaught here from Maple, and Maple will be taken out through Kool-Aid Wall. Jobu just pulls out the gat and gets the job done, not even knowing where their opponent truly lies, and that will be a round 1 for the Zips on a very close call, when, in all honesty, Fisher had a much better defense than they've had previously.
I really am shocked that Fisher just, I don't even know how to put that. Beezer playing on the top floor, I kind of get it. You're the main roamer. Maybe you work another pick or just waste more time. That's reasonable. But I am shocked that Fisher just didn't seem all too prepared for the same execute that Akron have done every single time Church has been in play, like without fault. Maybe that time they were going to have more of a presence over by Stock and Blue. That's fair. But when defending Church, you should already be anticipating that. It's a very default thing to do, having 1 or 2 people lurk by secret or oil pit to push into, the deep part of Blue so they can help deal with the people over by dummies who could be challenging dirt or just causing chaos on the opposing side of Church, for example. That's incredibly common when attacking this bomb site. So not having any kind of, readjustments done to countermeasure that, and again, not having something like a smoke to stop a default plant that has happened 3 times out of the 3 that base of floor site has been in play, it's really questionable by Fisher. And again, they just seem out of their comfort zone, and it just seems like they only know defaults or just really pocketed strats for this map, and Akron is punishing them for that.
I mean, IMAT specifically, who has not necessarily been the hottest on the kill feed when it comes to, I guess, post-rehost, they were sitting very solid before, so I still think in totality, they would be at least close to where Kosa currently is, and it's just been a game for Akron through and through. They're setting 5-1. They are nearing the precipice here on match point to close and secure, and they're already cutting down Fisher, who have tried to do one of the cheekiest strategies I've seen in quite a while. They all extend in through that pool room window, lose 2 players in the process, and Fisher now are once again struggling to get their foot in the door without losing the majority of their man count out right after the fact. And what an angle built me here by IMAT. Sees the legs of one, taps down Maple for a moment, but not able to do too much past that point. But nonetheless, for the rest of the team of Akron to have, well, an easier chance at taking down. That's 1 or 2 less bullets to get the job done. And it only takes 1 bullet to truly kill anyways. And Fisher are 2 bullets away at minimum from outright losing here and going into match point.
Well, you've got IMAT still just holding behind this weight rack. He takes another one down before being put in the dirt. Maple a kill for compensation, but might just be a little too late at this point. A minute 40 to go. Sure, that's plenty of time for Maple to work a couple of kills, but they are just currently hunting down this poor soul stuck in the gym rate room. Finally, Akron will put them out of their misery and take map point 6-1 so far against Fisher, who have really found no response in this map.
Is this one of those moments, especially after that last round, John, where Fisher look at this and say, hey, we go next, right? GG, go next. That last round, our whole strategy did not work. We didn't find quite literally any successes, to be honest. They got their constellation kill, but I just don't think this map is truly where Fisher are going to find themselves any sort of success. And instead of bleeding themselves dry for the next 5 rounds to get a chance to go to OT, just go to the next map. Go to, what is it you called it earlier for Oregon? The Great Equalizer. The Great Equalizer. Go to the Great Equalizer. Play your heart out on that map instead, and then go to map 3 and force map 3 to play at. Because Akron right now, they are sitting in a spot where they have 5 rounds of wiggle room. They could lose 4 in a row and then try hard the last one, and you have to try hard the next 5 without a doubt. And that even puts you in an even worse spot for OT of this map, and then even beyond that, heading into the next map, and possibly even third, because you're just going to be too tired to get the job done. It's one of those ones where, do you save the mentality and the physical strength now, or do you pray for the win? I just think it's too far gone. I think they need to just, have the mindset that the next map's already on the line.
I think that's the idea behind the technical pause or tactical pause part of now, is just get a mental reset. Be like, guys, I know we're 6-1 against us, but we don't play this map. And these guys are Akron. Like, they were the second best team in the Columbus Invitational, which was an event that happened just less than a month ago. They are clearly a team that's at the very least more experienced than us, and they like going to this map on the rare occasion. So just reset, think about what we need to work on individually as a team, not so much the strats and playstyle that is involved on a map like Clubhouse, and just begin to think a little bit more about Oregon. I feel like that is the concept more about that timeout, because trying to go for a long and bled out excursion when you are 1-6 on Clubhouse, even though this map is a lot more attacker favored than it used to be, it does seem a little futile against Akron, who, again, very experienced on this map and as a team as a whole.
I mean, I'll say it like this, which is purely a joking manner. I'll put it out there first and foremost. You can huff that NA copium and say, they're Akron, and this would be a moment where I'd say that's totally okay. That's fair, right? I wouldn't call this a negative copium, and you're just trying to do your best to say.
This is Akron play.
This is Akron, right? This is Akron
This is
on
real.
a map that they 100% will win most teams on. And you are Fisher, who I have highlighted so many times, because I do think Fisher is probably one of the best up-and-coming teams, without a doubt. And even then, they're already up there with some of the best. It's not even a matter of being up-and-coming. They have that potential, and they have that history. They can do so much more. What was that toss out there?
How did that miss? I think
I
it went past the wall. I don't think it hit the corner. Yeah, I think he just threw it way too far. Okay. Thanks.
There's so much there, though, for Fisher, right? You can say, hey, they're coping for it. No, they're totally content with where they are, I think. I think they're playing for that next one. Just try to give Akron a run for their money here and play for time, because right now, Akron, at the very least, they haven't killed 4 players, which is better than what Fisher had in just last round.
Oh, Gohan was trying to cook, maybe vaulting on top of that little workbench to maybe find a pick on that guy red stairs with the help of info of a drone. That would have been courageous, inspirational, might I add there, for Fisher. Just adding some salt into the wound, but a run-out attempt by Warrior is even worse than that. Immediately barricades himself back into the building after shutting down the sledge when you're only few sets of grenades, and the rest of Fisher's attack is pretty correlated towards the defensive side. They know it's mostly going to be a con execute. No one's even pushing in from garage, but this player by CC window is doing so much damage. IMAT eliminated as well. Fisher now have the man advantage for the first time in quite a while from map number 1, and they're slowly putting away some of that utility that Akron could use to stop a plant. Jobu was only down to 1 Toxic Babe. The only thing they could use after that is maybe the impacts by Kosa.
Still, 3 players is a dangerous force to be reckoned with for Akron, and on top of that, Kosa drops it to a even position. DBino's the player of Robe, and they're on side right now. Cappy's trying to cover them for now. DBino's Warrior in return. Jobu, though, with the Toxic Bay, was able to secure that pick, and it leaves just Cappy all by themselves. She'll have essentially their work cut out for them, and unfortunately, she just can't get the job done. And the whole Fisher College side will have to say, all right, that's a good map. It's totally fine for us. We'll need to play for that second. I don't think Fisher's a team that has a weak mentality whatsoever, especially when I mean, you have Yali yapping in your ear probably 24/7 coaching you guys. You guys are understanding of everything that can happen. They are one of the best coaches I've ever had the pleasure of listening to. You understand that these things can occur. You're playing for the next map, and they're going to have a very good few minutes in our break, John, of dissecting what went wrong, but also just saying, hey, 60 seconds on that, 4 minutes on the next, because we really got to key up for this next map.
And one thing to mention as well, general game day experience between Akron and Fisher is very limited. The only time these two teams have ever fought before, I believe, was the Columbus Invitational. So this is only this
on final day, right?
Yeah, this is the second time ever these two teams have fought off with one another. So typically, if you don't have a lot of bookwork against your opponent, more or less the opponent with just more general experience or more adaptable play style, which I feel like I'd have to give that to Akron just by a smidge, they'll most likely come out just, on an educational guess kind of basis. And it seems like, at least from Clubhouse, that is the storyline that the rest of the match could be going along with. But again, Oregon, it's the great equalizer. Really anything can happen. And if Akron gets a bit ahead of themselves, that could allow for some good potential for a third and final map. But We'll have to take a quick little break before we see that happening. We'll see you in Oregon in just a couple minutes. Welcome back, folks, to NECC Rainbow Six. In case you missed out on map number 1, we had the Fisher Falcons face off for only their second time against the Akron Zips, a new addition to the side of Rainbow Six here for NECC. They won quite decisively, that being Akron, on their map pick of Clubhouse 7-1. And what was that? Well, if you're gonna offer, what? Oh, well, it seems like Akron are up.
I'm here to remix. It's a packing peanut.
Oh my god. Well, hopefully, like you, we could see one of these two teams pack away a quick win on Oregon, similar to what we just saw a moment ago on Clubhouse. If that were to be Akron, well, our night would be ended quite shortly, I guess. We've been here for not even an hour, give or take, on the live broadcast, but we've got all 10 players in lobby. They're not really here to waste our time, so we'll hop into map number 2 just shortly, where I could imagine the operator bans might be a little more specific for both Akron and Fisher. Again, you have a lot more liberty on Oregon in terms of what you can ban operator-wise compared to Clubhouse, and with both Fisher and Akron playing on this map a handful of times in several different collegiate leagues, both Fisher and Akron could have a little more bookwork to know what they would want to ban against their opponents to make their lives a little more difficult for map number 2. And yeah, I guessed that one right on the mark. I was going to just flat out name call Ying because I looked back at the Columbus Invitational and saw that this has been banned a couple of times by Akron for this map. And once again, it will just follow that recurring pattern.
I wouldn't be shocked to see Fisher go for a target ban on someone like IMAD or, I don't know, dealing with Koso, but at the same time, you really need to get the priority bans done here on this map. There's not a lot of wiggle room, right? There's not a lot of leeway that you can truly go for. It's not a map where you can say, okay, well, we can let a Flores through. There's so many other ways to clear with it. It's fine if they play this. We can maybe let a Valkyrie in. It's not the worst case scenario, bring an IQ and just deal with it. It's not really capable here in Oregon, where everybody's going to have a near 10 and 10 experience because of the time period they've had here on this map. You kind of have to go with what's tried and true, and that's Ying, Flores, Valkyrie, and then having that Wamai. So none too shocking from either side. The Wamai is kind of sometimes hit or miss. It just kind of is really dependent on the team, but a very solid ban nonetheless. And it's going to be very interesting to see Akron now starting off on the defense, considering the very dominant turn they had on attack just last map, 5-1 start going into halftime. And yeah, they had a flawless second half as well for defense, but we didn't get to see as much of that. So I feel like seeing Akron start here is truly going to tell us not just the differences of the maps, but how they play in each half, which will be a good going point for the rest of the season here in the NECC, because we need those target points. We need plenty of things that experience these players to understand, not just as a team, if you're VOD reviewing, but as, talent and viewers saying, hey, Akron, they love the defense here in Oregon. Hey, they're really solid on attack when it comes to Clubhouse. Defense is, hit or miss 50-50. It's nice to have that little bit of history.
Big fan of the lineup here for Akron as well. Given the circumstances that both Wamai and Flores are off the board, it limits your options as to what you A, need to deal with, and B, what you can also bring out to counter your opponent. So they're not going to want to bring out a boatload of shields because there aren't going to be any magnets to be played around those shields, but you have other counter options like just ADSs and Banshees, Goyo packs as well, but maybe a lot of this will not matter because it seems like Fisher just want to go for a rush. But the introduction of Goyo to round 1, it could potentially thwart this rush by Fisher and maybe allow Jobu to ISO someone.
Well, there's the flames, and they're going to go straight through. They do not care.
What?
And wow! Robe and Gohan find a pick apiece. Now with the pistol in hand is Maple doing everything they can to, I guess, solidify this Fisher foothold. But look at the whole majority of the team sitting quite low. Not in the best of positions.
Hello.
Out of nowhere comes Maple, swinging and finding Hennessy, closing it out with a kill. Now breaking down one of the last Vulcan canisters that were available. Gohan sprays down Kosa, and it is just IMAT left standing. I guess the oldest player here on the side of Akron, and hopefully that seniority will allow for them to stay calm here in a very dangerous situation of this post-plant scenario, stuck in a 1v4. Collectively, though, not even a full player's worth of HP, but that's still 4 players' guns ready to bail down upon you in a moment's notice, and you are trapped at the top of back stairs with nowhere to go, a Nitro cell just barely not getting around that corner, and Gohan has no problems closing out that kill after the fact.
Really shocked that we had Fisher commit to that blitz rush when there was so much utility to stop them from getting in blue bunker. Not only that, but there was someone by barrel door and an actual extension inside of elbow as well, on top of that Vulcan pack. So really, the fact that both Robe and Gohan were able to win their 1-for-1s and just be reliant on that and that alone was impressive for Fisher. Once they killed the player, both barrel and elbow, Akron were scrambling to try to reset. There's only 2 defenders roughly on the bomb site. There was a defender in freezer, and I think someone not in closet, but someone close by. And the Blitz did a great job of spearheading them away from getting back in the bomb site and slowing down Fisher from getting that diffuser down. A ton of space was made just simply off of that Blitz shield. And maybe just that and that alone was enough to help Fisher get inside of blue bunker, despite there being toxic babes, despite there being a deployable shield, and despite there being Vulcan packs with several people looking around that double door. Still enough for them to get the round win. And now Akron decide, you know what? Let's just ignore laundry and just go kids and see what they throw at us, so we just have more info against our opponents.
I'll point out both attacking rounds we've seen Fisher start have been straight rushes, right? I figured that Yali's kind of replicating that scene from Always Sunny in Philadelphia of Charlie sitting and staring at a crazed manic board in the background with a bunch of pins and needles in it. Saying, just push through and we'll find our success. Just go through, right? Fisher, I mean, it works this time around. Yes, it wasn't great on our last map, right? It didn't work on Clubhouse, but to be fair, there was a lot more cutoff angles to be held. There is no direct vertical through the billiards window. There's no billiards window here on Oregon. There's no direct angle from above. They just play a direct through. It's much better equipped for that rush, and actually is I wouldn't say a normal strategy. It is a very viable strategy for this map, and it works. But Fisher are going to have to play a lot more of a standard push when it comes to the second floor, because they don't necessarily have that same leeway and that same directness that is capable. One of the only direct ways into the site is truly in through a standing position from this big window here next to the bunk bed. And they've already placed their barricade there. They're ready to lock it down. It's just really about trying to flush out the players still that are holding off an extended position. And there are even players down on the first floor still for Akron, and they have no problem getting the job done. Hennessy and Warrior each find a kill apiece to net themselves a 2-player advantage right off the bat.
Yeah, Hennessy really punishing Fisher for refusing to go into big tower. Now he can help with his defender playing over by trophy by watching that, I guess, main staircase near armory. One of the more difficult spots for a defender to deal with when they're actually extended into trophy. So great teamwork by Akron to solidify 2 separate attackers, and for the most part deny that potential of getting Master Wall opened up. Now they've really confirmed that Robe's been injured, but I don't think Akron have info or are just afraid that someone could be baiting the downed Thermite, but it just might not matter. Eventually, Maple can rotate across the map, resurrect their Thermite who was on the ground, but still, you've got Akron retaking Master Bedroom with a minute on the clock. A stun flies out for the trophy player, but this is a perfect bait. Warrior smokes Robe. Maple connects a trade, but they've got no clue. Zosa's still inside of Master.
Where you gonna go? Costa's got the perfect angle to keep you at bay. A hasty retreat made. Unfortunately, it does not seem to matter. Surf will barely get out of the POV, and Costa will not find anything to work with. They step down through the main entrance and now watching towards that armory staircase and armory hall. Unfortunately, Kappa still on the opposite side of the map, and now the only player left standing, still trying to work from that big window, and it's just not going to net themselves any success as Akron once again survive and thrive here in this round. The last one, they're trying to make just a fluke scenario off the back of the rush that caught them off guard. It's tying things up 1-1 now heading into the third round.
And for Akron, they're just reading very well into how Fisher is looking to attack on some of these objectives for Fisher. Exactly like we saw in round number 2, you get someone over by big window, you don't hear anyone or you don't see any drones coming by from big tower. So for Hennessy, he can assume, okay, all the lurkers that would normally be going into big tower are instead either trying to clear out the first floor a bit to get ready to go up white stairs, and they've got a guy big window as well. So you've got Master and big window. If someone's trying to get a Master clear going and it's a trophy extension, they need someone over by armory. So Hennessy immediately puts a pin in that issue and kills the guy top armory trying to deal with the trophy person. Now they can continue to be aggressive, which pays off a huge dividend by guaranteeing Fisher never step foot in Master for the entire segment of round number 2. That was beautifully done by Akron, just to punish Fisher for small things that don't seem to be a problem on paper, but against a top team in Collegiate, it's a huge issue. In fact, a round-changing impact that costs you all of round 2.
Yeah, it's something that you can't necessarily just give up over and over again, and Fisher will have to try to find some sort of variation to, I guess, adapt beyond that. We talked a little bit about how these teams don't have the most experience against each other, and we'll also have to keep in mind, I don't remember if their game was actually the one that was broadcast on that playoff day, which would make me believe that there wouldn't be maybe a VOD to go back on for these two teams. So it will come down to kind of just like remembering what was getting played and who could absorb the most the quickest. And I would maybe assume that there could be a responsibility there for, age and just the experience and play for Akron, and that's why they're really countering Fisher fairly well and requiring them to be quite cheeky. However, this basement site's not necessarily been the best case scenario for Akron, not just in round 1 with that total loss, but also starting off here in round 3. They lose first blood here of Jobu, and that is their plant denial. That's toxic bay wielding smoke off the board, and that puts them in a spot where not only are the main disadvantaged, they're losing a key part of their kit.
Now Akron might be a little more forced to actually work for some sort of refrag playing on this middle floor. Hennessy in particular, he's got the fall-off option of that security hatch, I believe, but wants to win a gunfight before making that commitment back down below. Sure, you've got tons of utility, like those Vulcan packs, Banshees, even a couple C4s still at the disposal of Akron, but again, like you mentioned, that main threat of the Toxic Babes are no longer there. Gohan is able to eliminate the Goyo, but Kosa, just caught at the corner of his eye, is able to catch him before he can readjust that crosshair. Still keeping one more roamer playing on this mid floor, and now they rotate, playing up an attic, and now that's a serious issue unless Robe can win this gunfight, but they run out of ammo with the bearing 9. Finally, Cappy through the hatch will shut them down, and now it's just the Anchors stuck in a 2v4.
Warriors trying to grass over towards Barrel, maybe realizing a player is in fact in play there, but not knowing where. Finally, though, Syrup will swing out. Unfortunately, Mabel does not get the better end of that fight, lose majority of their HP.
Play.
Warrior is going to extend for it. They've done this so consistently. The bait back in, and the turn back around catches Maple off guard, and off screen, Beezer is able to equalize just the same. These lurkers still back on site. Your Sentry players, they've done well, but unfortunately, Warrior is still short-lived for the remainder of the round, leaving just IMAT, much like we saw in round 1, but a much more favorable position to work from. No longer a 4v1, but a much more doable and obtainable 2v1 instead. IMAT will swing around Pillar, and unfortunately, not only is Robe on that side ready to fight back, but they also had their secondary player sitting inside drop who just easily could handle that spot to work from, and there is no way that box player is missing it. It will be Fisher to now find their second. That basement site has not been a welcome friend for Akron.
Nice bait attempt as well by the attacker who was in E-Box trying to get into the bomb site. Once the Banshee went off, they just double back and they try to make sure they get a nice clean trade in case the Habana, who's very low in HP, goes down. That being, I believe, was Robe. So good attempt just to make sure you keep that main advantage once you earned it back, that 2v2 going into the 2 versus 1. But Akron and their willingness to get aggressive, or at least the understanding of we're not going to win this round if we just sit in the bomb site and wait for Fisher to get ready to execute in a 4v2. We've got to isolate and go for 1v1 gunfights as they're setting up. Really good intuition call. And that almost won them back an important defensive hold on that Bazelor bomb site. But again, Fisher just having so many numbers and so many just attackers left on the board to deal with that problem of Akron getting aggressive and still having enough info in the end of that round, it was enough to eventually get rid of that main issue and still be up in the round count. Now dealing with a tertiary bomb site pick of Meeting Room, as clearly Akron have not had a load of success so far on their basement floor defenses.
Something's got to change, though, right? Whether it be a new objective choice, which we're obviously seeing here of heading over to kitchen and meeting, but maybe just trying to avoid the basement in general. I mean, that's now twice that hasn't worked out. Yes, the second one was a lot more comparable. It was not as lopsided, not as cheeky of a strategy coming out from Fisher. I won't say underhanded, but I always like to think of it as a cheeky and fun way to go about it. Akron, even in an attempt where Fisher are a lot more standardized, they still fall short in the end, so I would say avoid it. This is one of those scenarios you don't have to really test the waters over and over again. Cappy, though, comes out here ready to place down the shield, and will do so in rear stage. Is at least going to maintain that they have a solid foothold to work from. They can start to maybe apply pressure from there, but the problem is, much like we saw in Big Tower just 2 rounds previously, IMAT will step in from garage through that open door, breaks it open, and takes down Cappy. So not only do they only get 1 shield down, that's theoretically clearable by Akron as well, and doesn't really give them the best of footholds to work from, because that's been left open, which means they don't really have the safety past that shield whatsoever.
Going for a stage plant seems very challenging for Fisher now with the lack of those talent shields to their use. Fisher might need to opt for something different, perhaps. Seems like they're still wanting to clear out a majority of attic, at least getting that main double wall opened up. potentially rotating across the map to want to go for a potential kitchen execute could make some sense, but it seems like they're still trying to commit at least a fair chunk of their time and resources over towards stage. Maybe they can force back these defenders enough where they have to go off the bomb site to let them get in and plant, but with the help of these key barriers, that does not seem likely.
Huge angle to work from, and a hasty retreat garnered by Jobu, realizing, hey, pressure from above. I'll step away from my very easy position to take down. And despite the fact that Mabel sees two players pressuring through Green Hall, it does not stop them from swinging and getting a kill. And not just that, two make it three more after the fact. A total collapse from Akron once they realize the pressure starts to go up in through Attic, and they'll say, hey, we'll take this one by storm, and they'll capitalize once again, tying things. A very even matchup so far here on Oregon. You called it the great equalizer, and I think that's showing true to be the case. We are seeing that 50-50 style of Akron right now on defense. They're going to go back up to the second floor, which they handled fairly well. Smart idea. It's back in play for you. Pick it up. Get yourself to 3.
And unfortunately, with no one pushing in from Garage, that not only cost the life of Cappy, again, a very important operator on that OSA to keep alive for a stage execute, but also not able to get those single walls opened up looking by split. That allows more power positions to be held by Akron before Attic can get opened up to then utilize the hatch to force people off the bomb site. So with Fisher not having many options of really pushing away Akron to make space, they took advantage of that, won a couple of gunfights, and now they are once again another like 5v3, 4v2 position where Fisher just are not able to enter the bomb site without dying, or at the least getting traded after they kill someone, which is exactly what happened. Like you mentioned, now they're going back to kids. With Fisher, I was going to say for a second, it looked like they were trying to change things up and maybe get an Addict Master attack going rather than ignoring Addict, but I suppose not anymore because they only have Thermite for Hard Breach. So once again, they might be going for more of a big window and Master-oriented push instead.
We'll have to remember they applied, 2 players initially from Fisher in through Big Window, and unfortunately the problem lied in, and a lot of times we've seen OSHA come through. It didn't give them enough of success in the last round. Cappy only gets 1 shield down. The talent shield just didn't do enough in that spot. Akron goes for the pressure, and it essentially just rolls up and denies all of the potential that's there on rear stage. Fisher have completely opted to circumnavigate that choice, and they're going to go for a much more direct approach in regards to how they push in. They'll do that very quickly as well. Within 45 seconds, they get their first blood. Unfortunately, not only do they lose that one right after the back with an avenging blow, but they also step into a Frostmat SI moment, in case none of you were aware, and it'll net another kill quickly after the fact as well, leaving Fisher with just 2 players remaining, half the total man count of Akron, and they don't necessarily have the best core kits to get the job done. Yes, they do have 2 pocket EMPs for Kappa, but they don't necessarily have that safety net. They have not managed to get control over of Master Bedroom whatsoever today, John.
I realized the reference you were going for with Paulu today, but
Yes.
that first reminded me of the TSM Mirage game where, actually no, it wasn't even TSM Mirage, it was a different T3 game. I ended up seeing where Armory was just a constant nuisance because of those frost mats. But the TSM Mirage game, there was a lot of interesting plays between both Pro League teams. I'll put it like that lightly. Akron currently still up 2 defenders. They're just waiting for Fisher to force themselves up an Armory. Beautiful shot by Warrior. And Hennessy still playing over by Big Tower, just simply not contested, will net the final kill for the time being. And once again, Fisher, it just seems like they're refusing to adapt. And it's really questionable as to why, because Akron is a team that will punish you for that. And last round was another example of that.
I mean, they're getting so punished for not taking control of Big Tower, and you'd think after having it occur in round 3 and in round 4, that maybe maybe round 5. I'll take that back. Round 4, round 5. Round 3? My memory of which round was rich.
Round 3 was, you were right about round 3, and then we just had round
3.
5.
Was it 4 for
4 was
rear
meeting
stage where they got taken down from Garage? Yeah.
Yep.
That one was rough. You'd assume that they'd try to at least deny those angles. And it feels like there's a lack of discipline for Fisher when it comes to possibilities. And I do think that's one of those things that comes with kind of time as well when it comes to these maps. Unfortunately, this is their map pick, and they don't really have the leeway to necessarily fall victim to those sort of mistakes. Akron will change things up in their attack again. They went 5-1 on Clubhouse, and you can only assume they'll have at least the same level of talent when it comes to Oregon, considering just how much of a kind of mainstay map this has been for so long. The longer you've been here, the typically better you can be. What'd you say?
I mumbled, I knew it. I saw Beezer on Sens, and I thought the original idea was to either cut off the guy who's playing elbow or blue bunker, but I was like, they don't have a blitz, so why would they rush blue bunker? Nope, they switched to blitz, and now they're going to go for it, which, sure, this worked the first time, but now Akron is really prepared for this rush, and yeah, instantly denied. Warrior, opening gunfight. Blitz rushes in, but the shield is not going to be enough to thread the needle, but eventually he gets it done, but an instant trade by the player up inside a freezer, and in the background, the Vulcan Pat will finish off Robe, leaving just Gohan trapped in his own coffin. The Zips swiftly deny this round from being won by Fisher as they once again do not deny, and Beezer didn't even get to use his projector on the ROU.
I feel like that's one of those scenarios where Akron can jump the gun early, and they're even
Kosa's spitting right now.
Fool us once, and Fisher find that very funny. I would agree. It's a cheeky strategy. They're going for it. It is very funny. Must have been a Beezer call. I love Beezer to death. Beezer is so funny. Such a nice person. Either way, Akron, they shot that early, right? They detonated early. They knew the push was coming, and they had a little bit of an audio cue when Kid gets pulled out, and they're saying, hey, we know they're going to rush for that once again. They got caught off guard in round 2 when the rush didn't come out, but I think, 50% of them were like, they probably won't rush back-to-back rounds, right? It doesn't matter for Akron. They find a way to counter it. They managed to go 1-3 on that site, but every other site they were flawless in nature. So they take a 4-2 going into the second half, and Akron on the attack just last map had a 5-1 star. That is something that will be weighing down on Fisher's shoulders. They're already down by 2. They need to capitalize and catch up quickly, and they're going to try to do so here on the second floor. But Akron is a team that does like to apply pressure from that kid's room window. So expect to see some sort of repel there and actually a presence possibly over towards the big tower, but the lack of true hard breach may kind of throw that one back, though they do have the pocket breach in the hands of their Capitan.
Potentially relying on the fact that Fisher doesn't tend to bring up the cage, so they're not going to need a lot of denial for it. But then also begs the question, why bring out the Thatcher? They also have a Thermite. So Thermite and Capitao should be more than enough to get Addict and Master opened up. No one seems to be properly excelling in a trophy. Gohan's holding here lightly. Maybe he can work a pick or just break some drones, but he understands the threat as well over by Armory, but a well-placed drone and a lack of reaction by Gohan will cost him his life. And now Akron, they get trophy and master control, not even for free, but with the benefit of having a 5-on-4, and I think they're aware that someone could be trying to flank from either split or Z hallway, so now someone's guarding that. Fisher already on a massive back foot.
I mean, Akron just have so much control over that first floor already. They're not going to overextend because they don't need the pressure towards Zulu. They don't need a player over towards security. They can just kind of bait things out and play for time. And they have plenty of it up to this point. 120 seconds still ticking down and remaining. Maple has the option to quickly and hastily retreat over down towards that freezer staircase. But they want to pressure where they just saw the drum. Maybe aware that a player could be close. They initially tease that push. They'll take a couple steps back, still kind of meandering about in that hallway. But if they don't quickly start to maybe go for that, I guess, roundabout play, drop through basement, come back up through over towards main staircase and laundry, they could start to run into a couple problems as the whole team will start to fall apart on site. Mabel tries to go for the run out all the way over towards corridor near small tower. It doesn't net themselves any sort of success, and they'll have to step up white stairs instead. Thankfully, though, Bathrobe off screen takes down IMAX and will equalize things to a 4-4 with 70 seconds remaining.
Capitao Firebolt coming out. No one can get too aggressive on Hennessy's position, so he can begin to clear it from Addict a little bit easier, despite that Banshee being there to give away his intentions. Cappy's still waiting. He's currently trying to burn a little bit more off the timer. If they can isolate Capitao and kill the Addict player, now those people down by the actual drop can swing a little bit more freely and potentially get rid of Jobu before he can enter that bomb site. Those Toxic Babes buying a lot of time, but that was Robe's last Toxic Canister. So Fisher, they've got to act fast, and they've got to act now.
Well, the action has to get underway, and right now Warriors in a bit of a fanfare firefight. Unfortunately, not really finding as much success as they individually could. That's not the same thing to be said, though, for Hennessy and Jobu, who have very easily taken down one apiece. Warrior finally joins into the fray, and that's enough, leaving just Bathrobe by themselves. They've netted a triple kill so far here in this round. They'll need the ace, though, to secure, and that's a bit of a problem. They'll go ahead and extend over towards the games room wall. One player sitting up on bed, and it's not going to matter. Warrior puts them to sleep, and they'll find themselves another round ahead, edging closer and closer to sending us out here week 1 here for the NECC R6. There's still a couple more rounds to go, and Fisher put up a very solid front if it wasn't for the final 40 seconds where players just got capsized so quickly next to each other, there was not a really recoverable spot for them to work from.
And that really would be a statement too, Scott. Having a team not necessarily brand new to collegiate, but a team that's brand new to NECC immediately ascends into the highest tier of play and gives the biggest reality check that Fisher College has ever seen since maybe Ohio State University. That would be the only other time where they have been brutally humbled in competitive play for collegiate. Akron would be one of the few teams to have ever beaten Fisher College so far in their lineage inside of collegiate play, and doing so with such elegance in week number 1. Like I said, that would be just such a statement to start out our spring semester. And Fisher looking for more answers and looking for more options to maybe just slow down this inevitable loss depending on how this goes for Akron. They're looking to go the most preferred bomb site for Oregon, that being Church and Arsenal, or God, I made the other basement floor bomb site. Laundry and Supply. I was having flashbacks of Clubhouse. Apologies. But Fisher seems to be going for a somewhat bunker-styled defensive hold. Only real difference between their setup that they have compared to Akron's is that they have the Cade and Warden, but they're also great anchors for that basement floor bomb site, except for Gohan, who is currently lurking a little bit with Warden, but of course he can come back to the bomb site in any given moment. He's not too far away from the staircase of Laundry.
I'll point out as well, I am of the opinion that, yes, if you have a flawless season for the UCC, it is very impressive. But I also feel like if you are going to lose at the very beginning, right?
Which they did, funny enough, last semester.
Yeah, it's a great story to say, hey, we're mad, right? We're angry after our first week, second week, just the early losses that we faced. And we've gone flawless from there. We have learned from our mistakes. I'd rather a team come in and not be this perfect kind of marauding team, and that you can see that growth and development throughout the season. Akron is a team, it's very hard to see them grow. They've already done it so much. There's a point at which the teams that they face aren't always the best to kind of say, hey, we're learning on the fly. But they're a team that also doesn't take that to heart and say, hey, doesn't mean we can't develop. Doesn't mean we can't learn. They're constantly finding new ways to, I guess, change things up. And right now in this round, they've got to change things up quick because it's not working out for themselves. They lose one early. They get a wonderful nitrocell tossed out by Fisher. I don't think they were anticipating that it would get a kill. They were just kind of breach the hold and go for a shot after the fact. And unfortunately, not only the only success they found was the nitrocell explosion, they lost both players there right after the fact, which just evens the odds for Akron, who finally have flipped the table on its head.
Romer's finally hunted down by Akron. Leaves us at pretty much a stalemate in this 3 versus 3 where Akron, they've got enough utility to probably get past some of those ADS and the one deployable shield that Fisher have at their disposal, but also dealing with those toxic babes could be a bit of a problem if they want to try to go for a post-line position. Not only that, but the Vulcan packs are still available to Fisher, so they could waste plenty of time and maybe force Akron to completely change up where they're going to execute from. So far, they've got a Laundry and Freezer attack just about ready to go down, but Cappy moments away from deploying this Vulcan pack. That might flip the script here for Akron.
Well, Cappy's going to have to quickly take a couple steps back, but it doesn't necessarily mean they've lost control over towards that Freezer side. Very mainstay push, Freezer and Laundry being pincered. Sometimes you'll see a presence towards rear stage as well. But with only 3 players remaining, you don't have the real, I guess, flexibility to be able to do so. And instead, you'll have to take a much more direct approach from that Freezer side. Nitrocell tossed over the top. IMAT will survive its actual detonation, but will be DB'd in the process. Thankfully, still capable of being picked up. And Cappy with a quick flick, trying to do everything they can, but they can't muster up enough of a defense. And Hennessy and Jobu. Hennessy for 2, Jobu with that final, and a wonderful round once again for Akron, who started off on the most dire straits imaginable with 2 kills with 0 refrag back for 50+ seconds.
Gotta say as well, for Fisher specifically, a bit of a nitpick, don't get me wrong, but not having someone back up your closet player from maybe the rotate, or having them also guard against the people coming in from Freezer, maybe they were a bit squeamish of that because there was a talent shield just holding that long line of sight, so that would be pretty much a bit of a troll there for Fisher. But it just seemed like for Cappy, more specifically, who we were highlighting in those final 20 seconds, seemed like they had a lot on their plate, because not only were they worrying about the 2 attackers playing over in Freezer, but also they were trying to hold a crossfire with their teammate in Closet to kill the one guy Laundry, and as their Closet player died, and now they got to worry about both locations. Just didn't seem like Fisher had a lot left in the tank once those Vulcan packs had been removed, which was a pretty big concern since a lot of that utility is something they were relying on for that defensive bunker. Now it seems like they're doubling down on that, now introducing a Mira, which will make a freezer and laundry execute much more challenging, but not impossible, especially if they choose to ignore it. Based on their lineup, they might try to pull a bit of a strap book idea that Fisher brought out 2 different occasions when attacking this bomb site. The Blitz is in play for Kosa. This could get messy.
We'll have to see whether or not the cheeky strategy is going to work out. You can already see Akron prepping themselves over towards Barrel, but they're making quite a little bit of noise in regards to the quick sprint being made by their Osa Hennessy, and they're also going to swing IMAT up towards Big Tower using the best Garu hook that they can. It's not a full frontal fly pushing in through Barrel, which I think is one of the more important things that we can kind of key in on. Maple does everything they can with the Vulcan canister that they possibly can do at that time, but unfortunately, they'll just shoot it out and kind of wait for that moment. IMAT's going to transition in over towards that Harry Potter side to kind of make sure that they can be the boy that lived above and beyond, and unfortunately, it doesn't seem to work out for now. Beezer does a wonderful job by themselves of quickly spraying down 2. The 1 kill was gained in the process. IMAT still not really having that pincer, that secondary presence on that staircase, and that could be a problem for them, but thankfully, a shot connects from Hennessy, and Jobu will equalize for yet another. And despite there being a headshot available for Jobu, it just narrowly misses. And Beezer nets themselves a 4K here in this round, forcing IMAT to clutch up in a 2v1 who, I don't want to say he baited his whole team there, but he did not push down that staircase. Because of that, the full 4 that were holding in through Bales all got taken down.
Just seems so concerned for someone playing directly on that staircase or just behind Pillar, which was not the main concern for Akron. They were really looking to fully clear out Blue Bunker before they even haunt the idea of getting into E-Box, pushing in from that barrel doorway. So I can't really fault IMAT for that whatsoever, but now stuck in a really tricky 1 versus 2, little to no info, just having to face check every single nook and cranny that a Fisher defender could be sitting at. This seems nigh impossible unless someone gets a bit too trigger happy on the side of Fisher and allows IMAT to secure a 1v1, or if he just tries to isolate on his own, looking to creep his way in through supply room right next to Iconic, now looking to maybe just check every single position that Fisher could be playing in. He expects someone by Freezer, and there could be someone close by over in supply, but that isn't correct. There's the isolation. Cappy shut down. Now it's just Beezer, and the ace is denied, and the map is stolen by the Zips. They go up 2-0, starting out week number 1 with a bang against the former champs.
Fisher was looking to at least feed the beast, give Beezer the ace in this round. You said it's kind of expected that the Zips were going to take it when it was sitting at 4-2 at one point. It was about Fisher trying to deny the inevitable. And yes, the inevitable ultimately came true. The Zips go above and beyond. They had a wonderful game on map 1, and they showed that again on map 2. They even did it in a bit of a cheeky way for that last round, kind of saying, hey, Fisher, you guys had a, 33%, actually, I'd say 50% win rate for the rush. We can pull off a 100% win rate, but I'll be honest, that is a 0% win rate for the rush. That rush did not work for you guys that well. You took a little bit too much time. IMAT wasn't given the safety net to push down. IMAT then was forced to make the hero play for the 1v2, and if you're wanting a player to do that, yeah, I'd say IMAT's kind of the guy to go to. That or Kosa, who I think had a wonderful game on both maps here tonight, but no matter what, Fisher's going to have to look back on this and kind of figure out what they got to key on to, make up for those mistakes. And Akron are going to feel real happy with the result.
Yeah, that's normally one of the bigger issues with a rush in general, is you're heavily relying on the element of surprise, either by having a fake attack somewhere across the map. So you look at Laundry, for example, and you go, okay, a really default thing to do is do a small tower over, kill the guy by security or top freezer, and then push him from that direction, get Laundry set up later in the round. No one was there, so you knock that off as a potential attacking point. You've got an Amaru coming up in a big tower, so you think, okay, they want to have a bigger emphasis on big tower, maybe getting the meeting hatch opened up, maybe having someone by Blue Bunker. That's kind of what it led to. It was pretty well read into by the side of Fisher Falcons that there was going to be a rush. Not only that, but they probably heard, the OSHA shield being deployed. They saw a drone coming in. Someone was shooting the barricade open. So it was very directed by the Zips that they were going to go in for that rush. So the defense read into that fairly well, similar to what Akron did to them, a few rounds ago, kind of a bit of revenge, I suppose, for the Falcons. They denied the rush for the most part, But again, like I mentioned, when you're in a 1 versus 2 like that for the Amaru, you just have to hope you can isolate each defender. And that is exactly what happened, being able to kill the Jaeger, who had the most HP in that 2 versus 1. Now Beezer has to swing and hope the Amaru cannot react in time, and that is not what happened. So the round is forfeit. It's as simple as that. Yes, the rush strat did not work, but luckily the Amaru played well enough to still get the round win overall.
I feel like maybe if we'd seen Beezer play more towards, bunker wall instead of sitting, actually inside laundry, the crossfire would have been a little bit more effective because they were able to isolate by stepping into sight. It just feels like there was a little bit there for Fisher that they weren't necessarily ready for an alternating angle. They were only preparing for that haul, and because of that, they lost that last fight. And they needed Beezer to be the first one to die. Yeah, you want to give them an ace, it's fine, but they had the lowest HP. They had the worst chance off in a total one-on-one split for the one-on-one fights. Just played a little bit smart. I'd also point out, not only was there a difference in their strategy for the rush, I would even hardly calculate and call what Akron did a true rush. It was a Gone 6 was used, and they sprinted straight through the Vulcan canister. That was Fisher's strategy, right? They just straight up said, let's go in. Who cares the final result for it? Push. Do not give up on this rush. Akron shot out the Vulcan canister first. They waited things out. They broke down the barricade after the fact, and then they slowly proceeded to push forward. They didn't brutal rush. It was a very calculative rush, but I think it's something that is very fitting to how Akron play.
And again, when you have that spearhead of the blitz, I mean, you can't really readjust mid-round. Yeah. You've got to commit to that. It's a bit of a gamble, and at the end of the day, the gamble just narrowly worked. Similar to the fall semester, Fisher College not starting on the foot they probably wanted to, but they still have several weeks to change that. And now they know Akron are not a team to be messed with. And unfortunately, they had to learn that the hard way. Well, that does seem to conclude our night here on NECC's main stream, so we will end off the broadcast. But we still have plenty of other games that happen across the main week, so if you're interested in the esports scene as a whole, feel free to check us out tomorrow at around the same time, 6 or 9 Eastern Standard, to see what we've got in store for you tomorrow. Scott, do you know off the top of your head what games you got tomorrow? I think it's Overwatch or Rocket League.
I believe Wednesdays are Rocket League. No, Friday's a Rocket League, because I remember a school complaining that they didn't want to play Rocket League on Fridays. I remember that.
I don't really fault them for that.
They had something else going on. Yeah, it happens. I think Rocket League's on Fridays now. I think Wednesdays maybe Overwatch, and Thursdays maybe League of Legends. I think that's it is. But Tuesdays are cool though, because not only do you have R60, you also have Super Smash Bros. Ultimate with our turns that go on for that one. So while they may not be on broadcast, they are something that if you're really into the fighting scene, go ahead and hop into that one as well. Like John said, though, that is all we have for you guys here tonight. Tune in more throughout the week for more esport content. I'm sure you'll figure it out on your own what it actually is, and we'll be back next week to tell you what it actually is as well, as we'll also be tuning in. We'll see you guys tomorrow.